And we are live.
I'd like to welcome you. Thank you so much for attending this session to heal. It's a joint broadcast of the Rahman experience as well as random thoughts of rain. And I'm excited to be half of the dynamic duo. I guess we'll call ourselves the dynamic duo now. It's bringing this thing to fruition. My name is Rahman Johnson. For those that don't know, I am an actor, media personality, news anchor, reporter, professor, but most importantly, I'm him. I'm a man. I'm here. And the reason for this, and I'll also introduce my co-host and then the panelists. But the reason for this is there was a quick, simple Facebook post, and the post talked about Black men being coddled by Black women. Well, through that Facebook post, there were over 700 different comments and shares and likes with everything put together, with people saying, wait a minute, Black women don't coddle Black men. And some said, well, Black women do coddle Black men. And they went back and forth and put all of these things out there. And there were 700 comments because you said that Black love was that important to you. And so Love is my dear friend. And in conversation, we said, this is something that we need to talk about because that's the only way that we're going to heal. So that's why we're here tonight. We want this conversation to be raw. We want it to be obviously unscripted and unadulterated. But most importantly, we want the conversation to be safe. So make sure that when you comment, as you can do below, we want to bring you into the conversation. And you know what? If it gets real good, we just might add you into the stream. But make sure that you are being respectful of those around you and that you are ready to talk, like really talk, because that's the only way we can heal. And now let me introduce my co-host. She's an author, diva extraordinaire, and the host of many different poetry nights, but most importantly now, the host of Random Thoughts of Rain, the podcast. Please, let's welcome Love Rain.
Yay! Who that? Who that? So, thank you, Rock. So, for those of you that don't know, my name is Taryn LoveReigns Wharwood. Like Rockman said, I am an author. I'm a poet, curator, speaker, curator of dopeness and all that good stuff. And everything that Rock said is exactly right. It's head on because I feel like we all know that we are at a time or in a time that is unlike any other time we have ever experienced, right? But we also know that because we see how things have gone, nothing can stay the same, right? And in order for these things, in order for things not to stay the same, and in order for us to truly heal, we have to have those tough conversations. We have to have conversations that make us uncomfortable. We have to address these things because we've been ignoring it for too long, right? We talk about it at the family dinner table, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe we don't talk about it. And then it's a continuous cycle, right, of BS that we simply cannot stay in, right? In order for us to truly recognize and realize our power individually, we have to recognize and realize our power collectively. So that's the point of this conversation. So again, just to reiterate with everything that Rockman said, please be respectful, right? We're all adults, and we just want to have healthy conversation, and move forward. This is not something that's meant to bash anyone, any man, any woman, none of that, right? It's a conversation that's hoping to spark just healthy dialogue, right? So I'm also doing double duty. So you'll see me looking down a lot, but I'll be doing double
All of
duty
us
because I'm
looking
doing
down.
also I'm also tech, you know what I mean? So we so we're gonna go ahead and get into this conversation.
Let's do it. And before we move, let's introduce our panel. And I will start with let's see, because I know everybody on here, so I'm gonna try to do this for memory to see if I can start. Gavin, we'll leave you till last. First on my screen, I see Centauria Thomas, who is a social worker and community leader extraordinaire. She's also one of the smart kids. She's a Wunderkind. I like to say that, the Wunderkind. You know, remember when we was kids, she was one of the smart kids. That means child prodigy in German. But no, she's a really dynamic sister and a dear friend to all. But she's most importantly with involving and empowering our community. Ebony Payne English is a poet extraordinaire, not just a poet. I will call her a wordsmith. If you think she looks familiar, well, there's a mural of her face in downtown Jacksonville, and she does a lot of community building. Not only is she I guess we could call it an entrepreneur, not just an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur, because she allows her art to fuel not only her passion, but her pocketbook and moving the community forward. Ebony Payne English. Um, I almost said your other name. So Ruth Spencer, Ruth Spencer Coley, who I've
Auntie.
known since we were kids, and this is one of the smartest, funniest people. Ruth, what is the name of? We'll talk about it when we start, but she is just an extraordinaire in community advocacy. I know the work that she's done, but my thing, and I just talked about it backstage earlier. She started this cooking show just in her home, and this cooking show is extraordinary. I've literally put it on the kitchen on with the phone on the sink and let it roll while I was following along. So we'll have a chance to ask you about that. But thank you, Ruth. And I see Dr. Kenesha Bracely. Kenesha, PhD in education, a college professor and lecturer, travels the world. She's also a mother of the movement because unfortunately her son was taken from her due to violence, and she is the president of the foundation started in his honor. So honored to have you, Kenesha, with us. And last but not least, Mr. Edward Waters College 2018-19, and a barber who he'll tell us something. He's actually, look at this. This is real. This is Afropreneurship. This brother is cutting hair at Edward Waters College, safely, of course, while he is on this show. And that was his hustle. Mr. EWC, his hustle was cutting hair the entire time. So Gavin Anderson, to kind of comment on the brother side, he's also a former Edward Waters College football player, and I believe he's a teacher in the Duval County Public School System. He graduated in the Call Me Mr. program to get more Black males into the classroom. So that's our panel, and we're excited to have you with us. I think that's everybody I see, and let's get this started. And I want to give a question to just throw it out to the group, because this was the question that started everybody's conversation. Are we coddling men of color from women of color? And Gavin, we'll sit this one out while we hear it, but are Black men being coddled by Black women? And you got to unmute yourself. Remember, who's ever going to, Centauria, since you're looking, I should come to you because I can see all kind of things brewing over there. Centauria, what you got?
I mean, we already know the answer. I mean, we are to a certain extent. I mean, I just see it in the educational system where, I give you a prime example. So I'm a woman of many hustles. So I still mentor students and tutor students and work in the foster systems and all the other kind of stuff. And I have a caseload of kids on my hustle side, and all of my young men, I don't care if they're 15, 16, 17, I have to always constantly call, check up on them, grab them. Hey, are you going to do your session this week? Are we going to have our tutoring session? Are we going to have our mentoring session? But my little 8-year-old little girl, 12 o'clock on the dot, every Thursday, she'll call me with her questions, because she's already had it instilled in her that she has to be more than whatever our brothers are doing. She's never coddled. She's, and the coddling could manifest itself in all kind of ways. And I understand why it happens. I do understand why it happens. But it's no type of maturing from that coddling as they get older, and then it becomes more and more of a breakdown in school and other parts of their life and relationships as they get older and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, my answer is yeah. I don't know nothing, but my answer yeah.
You say yes. What about you, Dr. Bracely? We know, and I think Dr. Bracely comes with a unique perspective because you've lived overseas, right? You've lived in Arab countries in Africa. I mean, do you think that there's a coddling of men of color?
Yeah, definitely there's a coddling of men of color. I think that by women by nature are very nurturing and cuddling. I think it just sometimes goes a little bit too far. I think it happens more often in single parent homes, just because sometimes there's no balance. Not to say that in 2-parent homes that is better, but a lot of times in single parent homes, I'm speaking from a single parent perspective. So in single parent homes, a lot of times, like what I noticed even just with my own son, he was independent, but my daughter was more independent, just automatically. And then I'm thinking about my brother, the same. But when you mention other countries, in other countries, it's me living in the Middle East. I don't know that from a cultural perspective that they consider it coddling, because in the Middle East, the men are the priority. They're held to a different standard. The I was getting ready to say something, but I was like, yeah, I'll reserve. I won't say that. There's a phrase that they use in the Middle East, and they say,
I think it depends on certain variables and dynamics, but I'm guilty at times. Ebony, I noticed you smile a few times when you were
We may have lost Rockman for a moment, but I'm sure he'll be right back. So there was a comment, Kanice. First of all, thank you all for commenting. Please continue to do so. So Kanice said, I agree, but I think it depends on certain variables and dynamics. I'm guilty of it at times, right? So here's my question, right? And this is what sparked the conversation and what sparked that post that I made. I feel me being who I am, right? I am a Black lesbian woman, right? My reality is that I have not one Black man that I can for sure say that I can count on. Not one, right? And to me, that sucks. Like, quite simply, that sucks. And I don't understand that. I don't understand why that is, right? And I feel like, to a certain extent, when it comes to the coddling of men sometimes that we've done, that then negatively impacts us in the larger world, because here I am, a single Black lesbian woman out here. I don't have nobody to protect me, right? We look to the man. Historically, we look to the man to protect us. If I'm in a situation, this is a conversation that Rock and I had. If I'm in a situation where I feel like I need someone to fight for me or stand up for me, and I'm standing next to a white man, and between a Black man and a white man, my reality and my truth is that I would not expect that Black man to protect me. And I want to know why.
That's big. That's
can
yeah,
we
please
go back
jump in on it.
and
That's big.
kind
And
of
I'm sorry I had a little
define the
technical.
definition of coddling? Can we go back and define, how are we defining coddling? Because based on what some of the feedback that I've heard, and then what I just heard Love explain, I think we need to kind of define what we call coddling, what we consider to be coddling.
What say, because there are going to be many definitions of what folk are saying coddling is. I know when Love and I had this discussion, the thing was, I didn't see Black women as coddling Black men. I think we were, I won't say coddling, but Black women tend to be nurturers of the family, period, of the family dynamic, but I won't say it is coddling. And Terry, first of all, and I saw a comment, and I got to say this. I'm sorry. And I don't want to, I don't advocate that term. Let me apologize. It almost brings tears to my eyes. And it hurts me to hear you think that we as men of color wouldn't be there for you. And I know you don't mean me. I get it. I'm just going to speak up for the brothers and say I apologize. And I want to do whatever I can as an individual, and hopefully to inspire the collective to reconnect your belief in the fact that Black men will be there for you when you need it. So I commit that to you, just stepping out of the host role, because it's painful. Honestly, when we look at, I think we need to go back now. So what is, I don't want to, give mine, but what do you think it is? Ruth, I was locked out for a second. When you say coddling, I mean, what comes to mind for you when we say coddling Black men? How do you define it?
So for me, and I have such a varied experience. I'm what you would call daddy's girl. I have a strong brother. I am married to a Marine. I think the coddling is more than taking care of somebody, it's not holding them to a standard. So for me, it is as simple as I'm not opening my own door. Like, I'm gonna sit in the car and wait for you to open it. If I am with my son, I married into teenagers, and that's why I really wanted to be on this panel, because I've worked with teens for so long, and I now have a son who is also being raised by someone else. So there are two different parenting styles. I think it is the ability to accept the level of foolishness. So, for example, should you wash the dishes in the house and the dishes aren't washed properly? Every Black woman in my line would make you wash every dish in her house, clean or not, out of the cabinet. There will be no, oh, I missed that one, I'm gonna scrub it up. Or someone to say, well, let me just do it because I know he is tired. I don't care that you're tired. The world does not care that you're tired. And I'm not trying to raise someone who would do things halfway. So it's not holding our young Black men to a standard that they will need to know in adulthood. And I'm not saying rush them to adulthood, but we need to teach them the things as children in age appropriate increments that they're going to need to know to survive. I have strong feelings.
Oh,
Overly emotional and attentive, oftentimes to everyone's detriment. Coddling restricts maturity. Interesting. What say you? Let's see. And Ebony, I mean, did we get a definition from you? Because again, like, I kind of agree with Ruth. I don't see it as coddling. But what's your definition?
So I think Marie hit it on the head. That's my definition of coddling, is providing overly emotionally based um, treatment that would hinder maturity, maturation. And so as an educator of teenagers, and as uh, someone who has a child with a Black man, um, and I have two brothers as well as nephews, I can say that it does happen. There's a lot of coddling that goes on with Black men, but I have two different perspectives on it, right? So everybody doesn't process trauma the same. And we're talking about being, especially to your point, LoveReigns, which was a very important point that you made, that you said that you felt like uh, you don't know one Black man in your life that you can depend on. So I want to break that down, because I think it does need to be, at least in the portion of this conversation where we're at, is that everybody responds to trauma differently. And growing up as a Black man, specifically in the South, and I can only speak for my circle. I can't speak for your circle, Taryn, but most of the Black men in my circle grew up in poverty in the South. That in itself is a trauma, and it does affect the way that you process information. So what I've found to be truth about Black women is that everybody expects us to just like continue to like go forward and continue, be something, make something of yourself, go to school, and not respond to the triggers of your environment. With Black men, they expect them not only to continue, but to also provide, hunt, gather, protect, right? But most of the Black men I knew were never like properly shown how to protect their mental and emotional health, given the current conditions that they are subjected to. And so because of that, they don't process information from a point of empathy, right? Concern. From a point of survival. Like, how am I going to survive this moment? So yes, there is a over I think there's an exorbitant amount of coddling that takes place within Black men. But for me, it's because Black men do not know how to process when they're poor. They don't know how to
yeah.
do much of anything that's emotionally intelligent when they're poor. They don't know how to be nice to you. They don't know how to protect you. They don't know how to give two shits like when they're poor. they become hostile. They become survive, kill, or be killed. It becomes by any means necessary. And because of that, I think the black women in their life tends to try to make them feel at ease and like it's okay and don't worry about it. I'll handle it. They don't want them to turn into these these people that have no heart and no thought, no presence of mind or empathy in their actions. And I find myself doing it. That's why Marie's comment stung me. I find myself
Yeah.
doing that to the black men in my life, just like to take the eat, like so that they're not concerned that their pockets may be messed up. Like, don't worry about it. It's a non-issue. Relax, because
Yeah.
it's a thing. We may not want to say that, but it is a thing. Black men,
Yeah.
they do not act the same. They're not the same person. They're just not.
Yeah, and
So
I agree with you, right? And I know I saw Mr. EWC. He was saying some stuff. I know he looked like he ready to talk. But let me say this real quick. I'm glad that you brought that up in terms of the definition, right? So for me, I get that, and I get, we all have our own triggers, and we react to certain things, certain traumatic experiences differently, right? So maybe I'm thinking about it as, two separate things, right? So the triggers and the trauma that directly impact or affect a black man's relationship in his adulthood, I completely agree that it's directly from, their situation, or their experience, or their society. But at the same time, I'm 37 years old, right? And it hurts that at 37 years old, I can't pick up the phone and say, and this, I'm talking about my family, right? Of course, there are men, you know what I mean? I can call Rock, right? And say, hey, if I really needed help, or I needed a man to do something, right? But to me, I can't go I don't have an uncle or my dad, or a cousin that I can depend on, that I know that's going to ride for me. So when I have relationships with black men, especially, they are important to me. They're 10 times more important to me, which I'm not ashamed to say. They're 10 times more important to me than my relationships with women, because it's hard enough because of how it was brought up. Without these men in my life, I hold on to the relationships that I have with black men, especially if I feel that it's a genuine relationship, right? So at any time when it then turns into something else, whether they're trying to have sex with me, or they're trying to say, oh, I can turn you, you just ain't been with the right one. These are the conversations that black men, my friends, have said to me, right? But I have white male friends. Not one time have they ever made a pass at me. Not one time have they ever made me feel uncomfortable. But you put me in a room with a black man, I start to tense up, right? And that's what I'm talking about. And that's because I want to move, not just for me, I want to move past that. I don't want to walk in a room or feel, that I feel afraid if I'm in the room with a black man. I don't want to feel that way. So that's why I say I feel like it's two different things.
So, love, I just want to. So, what I hear you saying is you feel like that within your family, or men that you felt like you would
Right.
be able to depend on, you haven't been able to depend on. And then those who you thought that you can trust, you haven't been able to trust. And you equate that to coddling because you weren't able to hold them
Right.
accountable when you
That,
felt like
that.
you should have. Okay, I just want to make sure. All right.
Y'all know,
What I hear you
the
saying is, look, okay.
the little thing that was behind Obama, when what's the dude that played
Yeah,
Obama's other? That's
yeah.
what Dr.
The
Braceley is for
interpreter, like
me.
Key and Peele. Yeah, Key and
Yeah,
Peele.
Dr. Braceley is my interpreter. What she said.
What I hear you saying is okay. Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page. So when I'm responding, I'm responding from where you're coming, or everybody, where you're coming from. Because when I heard Ebony speak, I'm like, well, trauma and the response to trauma is not really coddling, because as women, we go through trauma too, and we behave a certain way due to that trauma. So I don't equate that to coddling, but there is a difference between respecting your trauma and caring about Black men and then not holding them accountable for their actions when they hurt us. That's two totally different things. So I just wanted to clarify what we were talking about, so that when I'm responding, on that same level.
Yeah, I wasn't calling the trauma coddling. I was saying the coddling is a result of being conscientious of their trauma. And so I'm guilty of it because I do coddle Black men, but it's out of like their traumas being something very present in my life in the line of work I do.
But that's a difference in that and not holding them accountable, because you're not saying, there's two. That's a fine line between those two things.
You cannot not incubate them from stuff, but still hold them accountable and give them tough questions. Yeah, you're saying the same thing. Yeah, we're on the same page. Yeah. Gavin, I want to get you in this conversation. I know you had some stuff to say. I know you're in the midst of cutting, which I love to see. Tell me where you are in this space.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We hear you fine.
All right. So first of all, I just want to say thank y'all for inviting me. Shouts out to you, Rock. You dope for this one. But all in all, I was kind of collecting the information because I totally missed out on the comment and everything of that nature. So I'm sorry about that. But as far as in catching up to speed, a few points that I like to embark on from like listening and kind of connecting myself with the views that everyone else is kind of pitching out. The one view that I can relate to, I didn't really catch her name because I was in the middle of cutting, but she mentioned the form of men coming out of poverty, and that's something that I can ultimately relate to. I'm not sure how many people are fond of Hoagie, Florida, but if you type Hoagie, Florida in into your Google search engine at any time of the day, it's pretty much the top 10 most worst places to come out of as far as into profitable margins or whatever the case may be. So I can definitely relate to that. But another thing that I can also relate to that was mentioned as far as into one of the reasonings is coming from a single parent home as well. This math is ridiculous. But coming from a single parent home, man, I can definitely relate to that. Just not only coming from a single parent home, but coming from a single parent home that's not from here. Also being a Jamaican and having a big difference as far as into what is instilled in my household. So I can also relate to the woman who stated that waiting and teaching your sons to open the door and things of that nature. That was also something that I was instilled within a different way, not even just through the way of moving about with your mother, but just a way of moving about in life in certain settings and things of that nature, church, school, whatever the place that you may be. A lot of times too, what we also got to understand is sometimes it's not about holding people accountable for what you think they know. You got to hold somebody accountable for what they ultimately know themselves. You understand what I'm saying? Because they don't know. Ultimately, it's not them just going about life and doing it as like a day ago. It's just them being ignorant and kind of like lost in the time of where they are as a person and what they're missing out just basically overall as a human being. So it's definitely a lot of views that I can say that I can tell off of, but ultimately to give my own perspective, I will say this. Through my experience, I can say that I've been caught in a way just due to as well as coming up from a different upbringing. My mother coming to America, she didn't really know and understand the way about certain things, and also you gotta understand the certain times that we're dealing with coming into life and dealing with certain type of oppressions and
I think
kind of
we're
hard to really
losing.
kind of find the pinpoint. Say it again.
And I think we're losing your signal a bit, but I want to, if I may, thank you, Gavin. And you made some really good salient points. I think we're losing your signal, but I gotta ask, since Gavin brought that up, and Kanisha, everybody was, if you notice, everybody saying thank you for helping us to define what it is. How then do we connect the dots? Taking what Gavin said, taking what everybody said, and us saying that, okay, this poverty thing exists, and it's the reason that Black men act a certain way, and it's the reason why Black women treat Black men a certain way. How then do we get to the spot and start to get people to understand as a whole? And obviously we're not a monolith, so it's not going to happen instantly, but how do we get to that space where we can start to push this understanding of they must be held accountable, but we still need to nurture them and not let nurture be a bad thing? And I know if we knew the answer to that, we'd shut it all down. But how do you think? And by the way, before you answer that question, we just want to just highlight the fact that Centauria held a glass of red wine up, and it just touched my spirit in a way that I really want to. And you're the only one who thought about it, and we love you. The red wine.
I'm a grown ass woman. Always remember that, Rob. I'm a grown ass woman.
And you know that.
I drink wine.
Why I love it.
Look.
And can I add something real quick to that?
Don't wear it. Look, the red cup red wine is gone.
You guys, I know somebody has a red solo. So here's the other thing I want to add too is how not only do we move, how do we move forward and moving and holding them accountable? How do we hold ourselves accountable, right? Like, because by nature, I'm a person, I want to fix stuff, right? No matter how much my mom hates it and my friends hate it, I'm a fixer. It makes me happy, right? So how can we fix it?
Okay, so I'm going to jump in here because I have some super strong thoughts. Number one, I see this across the board as an issue in the kids that I work with, from communities that are disadvantaged, from dirt poor communities like the ghetto, the hood adjacent, and affluent, are all having the same issues with coddling their sons. And we talk a lot, my husband and I, quite a bit about that we're failing this generation. So it's more than just coming out of poverty. There are things that you need to know. And Taryn, I do really want to address what you said about not feeling safe in the room with Black men. I think a part of what we're teaching our sons is your sexuality is part of your manhood. So you have to conquer. And A, that's not okay. And B, when we're teaching our sons to be accountable for their actions, it's not necessarily what you lack. There are always going to be things that you need to know, whether you have resources or don't have resources. There's an exchange of energies and an exchange of intention that really, unfortunately, needs to be tailored for communities, but sometimes it's expensive. Like my kid, he gets an allowance. I recognize that every other kid doesn't get an allowance. We need to raise all the kids to be fiscally responsible and to make good choices. So how do we make those two things meet in the middle without thinking through that, oh my gosh, my baby doesn't have Jordans, so I'm gonna make sure that I don't pay this bill so he can have Jordans. In reality, he doesn't need Jordans. You need to teach him that he needs real shoes. Mm-hmm. And then other things will fall into place, or the work that comes with spending $200-$300 on a pair of shoes. All of these are lessons. You have thoughts?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got the tap.
Thank you, Brother Coley. Oh.
This is just coming from a perspective because I too was raised by, I'm the youngest of 5. 4 boys, 1 girl. My sister was, hey, you got to be the responsible one in the house. And my mom tried to teach all of us the best that she could. So in a way, my mom taught us how to cook, how to clean. So I don't have to depend on someone to do that. Now, like a lot of the gentlemen on our panel, we were raised by single mothers, majority of us. So even though my father was around, he wasn't around, and I had to learn what I could from him when I was around him. So my whole thing was, when I become a father, I have my son or my children in general, I'm going to provide for them the way my parents or my father did not provide for me. So in a way, what's the word I'm looking for? I have not coddled
Say it.
or
Claim it.
I have handicapped them in a way that if I can't do it, my dad will take care of it. And that's how I feel that I failed my children, and I'm trying to change their way of thinking, but that's kind of hard, especially when I'm also dealing with a two-parent household, because they hear different from my ex or their mother.
Like co-parenting?
Yes.
You mean?
And hear differently from me.
And let me say, it's more than just if I can't handle it, my dad will handle it. It's more of I'm frustrated, so I'm gonna stop handling it, and then somebody will do it for me. So I come from no, you're gonna push through and figure it out. Whereas
exactly.
So we have a little different in our perspective.
And let's, I'm sorry, I gotta jump in, and I know we need to get to you, Kanisha, but let's not all put it on black men either. There was a young lady in my class, and like most of us on this panel, we're all educators in some way, shape, or form, artists, but we're educators. And this young lady in my class, who shared, you know, I won't put her name, but the first thing she would do in my class is tell me, oh, well, I got a learning disability. I got a learning disability. Like, that was her broken record speech to me. And if you're watching, see what happens when you pay attention. She kept saying over and over, she had a learning disability, right? So finally, I stopped her and I shut her down publicly in class. Like, she would say this and I would tell her privately, you got to push through. You got what you were saying. She had been so enabled, coddled, handicapped, whatever you want to call it. So if she didn't see it and understand it, that's my go-to. I got a learning disability. I don't understand it. And I told her, I said, well, you haven't even tried before you said you have a learning disability. So I'm gonna let you fall. And I had to do it to her publicly. I let her fail a couple of times. Can I tell you all that young lady made an A in my class this semester? And I don't give grades.
Yes. Yeah.
She earned an A, but it was because I forced her. And I think you're right when you say that. We gotta force for some reason, and I hate to sound like somebody's grandfather, but we have this entire generation of folk that want to be awarded for doing what they supposed to do anyway.
Listen, I hate the participation trophy.
It's men, it's the whole group.
Well, but
they want to do nothing.
So that's the thing, Rahman. Like, even when you say that, that happens more often that I've seen with black men than black women. More often than not, black women are not congratulated for the things they accomplish because we're expected to accomplish great things. So we don't get the hero cookies. We don't get the good jobs. I was an AB honor roll student. I didn't get a congratulations. My brother made a C, and we're going out to dinner to celebrate him because he didn't get a D or an F. And that's what we grown accustomed to. So when a black man cares for his children, for instance, it was a trauma for me because I'm a single mother. My daughter's school did a dads take the kids to school day. And when the dads take the kids to school, they get breakfast and they get pictures, right? So what we have is a culture where women are taking their children to school every morning, every day. Some of them are dropping the kids off, heading straight to work, right? They don't get no free breakfast. They don't get coffee. They don't get to stop and pose for a picture. Most of the time, that's what's going on every day, right? And so they do one time a semester where they say, okay, we're going to let your dad drop you off and we're going to celebrate him for doing a simple task, something as simple as taking your child to school, right? And then they get celebrated, right? If a father is in their child's life, they're more celebrated when they post pictures with their children than mothers who are doing it every day. Some of them by themselves without the input of their co-parent. And like, that is a culture, and that has gone on and on and on and on. And that something as simple as that, you know, it's something that we deal with. That it is, to me, a form of coddling for us not to address it, for us to just keep it moving and not complain and just be like, all right, you know.
That's more than coddling. I mean, that's just. I think that. I mean, you. Oh, hey, Mom, you look cute stuff. But like what you're saying, and also like what Sean said, I kind of want to do a mashup of both, because Sean was like more saying like the lack of some things of manhood that he had to learn on his own was because of the absence of his dad. But you know, part of it, if your dad was in a home, would he have had the tools to be able to do more, be more, and be that more a better role model for you to be able to be in those spaces and be able to attack certain things. And like, what if you had the tools? Would have been a better situation if you would have been around? Maybe so, maybe not. Because as Black people in America, since we got off the boat, we had this weird ass backwards perspective of what the roles of matriarchy and patriarchy is in the world. We're trying to follow this Eurocentric patriarchy and matriarchy in the world. It got shit to do with what Black people, what we've come from. Even what you're saying, Ebony, like, men in America. I never lived in no other country but America, and I've studied primarily American history. So I'm looking at America where we are right now. They have had no one has thought of them having a role in the parenting, the actual parenting of a child until like the last maybe 20 years. So that's why you have these goofy ass, let's like jump over a fucking bridge because they didn't want to come out to the school and take the kids to the school and they shouldn't be doing it anyway. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna have to learn our way out of that in a certain kind of sense. You know what I'm saying? And even with that, that has nothing to do with the Black experience in America, because Black women, again, since we got off the boat, we've been working, screwing master, doing getting raped and all kinds of stuff in this world, and still coming back into our sheds and cooking the food at night. You understand what I'm saying? Like the whole like men should make more than a woman. It never really has anything to do with the Black person in America. I look at I live off Up Street here out east. I live out east. And you know when you live out east when you call it out east. My great grandmother, she was born in 1901, and she lived on Oakley Street. They built her home house down. But she was a domestic. Her mom was slave. You know what I'm saying? She worked. Every woman in my family have worked. We don't have the narrative of woman stay home, men, earn the keep, and then they come home and bring the money back. I know Tasha's whole, experience of men in America, because I know me and her, just since we was 12 years old. So I knew she was finding a Sean, and when she found the Sean, I was like, girl, stick with him, because that's the thing, and you ain't gonna feel like a unicorn like right now. Like you know what I'm saying? Like even with you, Rahman, it's like you come you overachieve so much that we put on women more than anything. Girl children, we always expect them to do more, be more, go to school, make good grades, be virginal and angelic and all this other kind of bullshit. Don't cuss. Keep your legs crossed. Keep your weight down. Cross your legs. Think twice. Pray to God.
Go to school. Get a doctorate. Get 2 doctorates.
Get married and have 3 children. But I mean, it's just the whole.
But it's okay.
So wait a minute. No, absolutely not, Gavin. You better cut. So we don't expect that from Black men.
No, not at the same level.
No, I disagree.
Not at the same level.
I'm not saying. I will say it's not as a whole.
No, we don't.
There are many families.
No, even at Gavin, when he said that he's a Caribbean descent, I work with a hyper Caribbean population for a long period of time. The coddling in your culture is hyper aggressive. The Caribbean, like, I'm sorry, brother, I don't know you, but you seem like a solid cat, but I'm talking about your culture. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about those who live in islands that's surrounded by water. I'm talking about the Cubans, Jamaicans, Dominicans, Panamanians. I'm talking your sons do a lot less more than the daughters. You know what I'm saying? You bring
how do we change that?
You bring a woman up to your mama house and your mama gonna judge how that woman make her curry or whatever else, when this woman might have 8 master's degrees or some shit like that. I ain't lying. And I'm not gonna talk all like, I'm sorry, doctor. I know you're a doctor, but I'm just gonna talk like
Victoria. I gotta ask you though.
Rahman, how you grew up?
Hold on, Centauri. Hold on, she's muted. Unmute her. Somebody. Hold on, Centauri. We can't hear Centauri. Say that again.
Yeah.
I said like your mom, like, just as an outsider looking in, You know what I'm saying? Looking at your mama as a community activist. Your mama was hyper activist, and you took on that same role. Like your mama didn't like press no stop buttons with you. And that don't
before woken was a thing.
Yeah, and that don't usually happen with a lot of Black men that I've experienced. I'm right there with Taryn. Like I had when I was around Taryn age, I'm 43 now. I was like 43, 35. I specifically sought out Black men to be in my life that were non-sexual, that could be my friend, and that were protector gatherers in my tribe. But I had to actively seek that out. I didn't have to seek that out with my women friends, and my men friends don't have to seek that out with me. But it's sad that I had to seek that out to have some type of balance between male and female energy in my world. And I don't have a PhD in anything. This is my perspective of living specifically in the city of Jacksonville for the majority of my life. Now I mute myself.
That's mind blowing to me. I mean, it's huge to think that we don't all have an expectation of greatness and excellence for everybody that comes about. I mean, come on, like, and maybe we
have the expectation. I think we have it's like I feel like we have the expectation, right? Like you see a young boy, or you see your nephew. I'm gonna mute you real quick. I think it's somebody's feedback, but we have the expectation, right? We have the expectation for people to be great, whether it's male or female. As soon as the child is born, we want to speak life into that child. We want to speak, all kinds of great things. But for something happens along the way to where they now become an adult, and now we're at a point where I have to beg this Black man to protect me, where I can go to a Black woman and feel safe and feel protected. You know what I'm saying? Because I know my female friends, they gonna ride for me. They are going to fight for me no matter what, right? But I can't say the same thing for a Black man. So it's like I don't know what happens along the way where we're raised the same. We're raised with the same expectations by the same people, right? We always have that, and nobody expects the Black man to fail. We want them to succeed. Hell, we demand that they do succeed so that we can say, no, white society, this Black man right here is going to be great. He is great. That's what we do. But we don't have the Black men don't give that to us.
Taryn, I beg to differ, and I think it's a little different. Gavin wants to jump in, but I got to say this. Just importantly, it's interesting that the problem, based on what I'm hearing on this panel, that was so-called perpetuated and created by sisters, they now vilify the brothers for the problem that they created. I don't understand that. But Gavin has something he wanted to say. Gavin, jump in. That's what it seems like you're saying to me, and I want to hear it. Maybe I'm in the words of Dr. Braceley. That's what.
Well, how did you gather that we created the problem?
Because it's just like this. If you have and I don't mean to equate Black men to dogs at all, but if you have some dogs that you take and give a certain thing to, they're gonna come back to where they get the thing from over and over again. But then you want to change. What you're saying is that that sisters have created this behavior. Then they say all of a sudden, hey, no, I want you to do this thing, when they didn't do what Ruth is doing and trying to create this Black man from childhood. They just nurture, and they basically overdo it. And then all of a sudden, when they're not doing anything, they say, well, why aren't you doing anything? That's what it sounded like.
But that's not what I heard everybody say. I heard the young lady with the gentleman next to her. He said that as a parent, he ended up giving more to his kids because he wanted them to have better than what he had. But he felt like he did it a little bit like overboard. I feel like every generation of parents end up wanting their kids to have a better life than what they had. Not that our lives are so bad. Not everybody's lives are bad, but we always, want our kids to have more. Then I heard somebody talk about culture. culture, it's not our job to change. Like, I'm not trying to go over into the Middle East, and this is something that irritates me. Do not, if you're a traveler, take your American ways and ideologies and go to another country and tell them how they should be acting. That's the most irritating thing to me. So we're not supposed. Somebody brought up culture, but that's not our job. When the topic of culture was brought up, somebody said, how should we change that? And it's like, it's not our job to change somebody else's culture. That's not what we're talking about. Then I heard some accountability and making sure that we had men that we can depend on. We didn't create a man that we couldn't depend on. I didn't create a son, and my mom didn't create a brother that we couldn't depend. I can depend. Like, I don't know if any of y'all follow me on social media, I already know I can depend on my brother. I was raised as I'm my brother.
I can depend on your brother.
You can depend on my brother, right? So I don't think that as women we created something and then we're coming back and saying you aren't doing anything that we created you to do. What I feel is happening is that there's an issue with communication. So you're listening with not you, I'm saying in general, like society. You're listening with judgment as opposed to being able to hear. The hearing part is you haven't been taught how to articulate. And then the other issue is what I've heard is like when a man, not on this panel, but in general, when a man has feelings that they want to express or that they need to express, they're looked at as weak. So then when you talk about men aren't doing this or men not standing up or men are doing, it's kind of like no one knows whether it's a woman or a man. No one knows what they should be doing to support one another because we can't articulate effectively what we need from one another.
Did we lose Dr. Bracely?
No.
And then once we do articulate what we need from one another, then you have to have a willingness to give it without the attitude, without the drama. And that goes for the man and the woman. Have a willingness and an openness to give it once I articulate. And don't give me what you want me to have. When I tell you what I need, give me that. And that goes the same way. When a man tells you what they need, give him that. Don't give him what you think you want or what you think he ought to have. Mm-hmm. So that's when you ask, how can we resolve this? To me, it's with effective communication. So now we need to learn how to communicate. Let's go back to the basics because we don't know how to. I just listened to you say, all of y'all created this. And I'm like, how did he hear it? Where did he hear that? So it's still like something, if you heard that, that means we're still not communicating effectively.
And I think communication is the most biggest issue because the one thing is that men, and like I said, I'm speaking from my perspective, like you said, doctor, have been taught to be, you got to be strong. You got to be the dude that got to go out here and make it work. You can't show emotion because that is a signifies that you are weak. And we don't know how to communicate how we feel, what really is on our nerve, what is actually causing pain and discontent. So we can't feel that from anybody else because we haven't been taught that. So I had to learn those things. And I try to bring it to my current relationship with my wife, is that to sit down and actually listen to what she needs. And sometimes I get it wrong, not perfect.
Me too.
But to try to sit down and actually listen to what she needs and what she wants and not assume things, because assumptions get you in trouble.
Yeah. And the other thing I heard, I think is your wife, she talked about history. So when I was listening to everybody talk, I'm like, we were already broken. So then we're expecting one another to come in these fragmented pieces, trying to figure out what we should be doing and how we should be uplifting one another. But we were broken. The man was stripped away from us. Yeah. So at what point was he taught? Like at what point was he taught how to come in and not saying it's an excuse. I'm not saying excuse,
No.
but at what point have we been taught outside of
Yeah.
being a provider, being a nurturer, being a caregiver as a woman, and then as a man, being a hunter or being a provider or being whatever? How do we break? That's the question. How do we break away from that so that then we can come together and support one another? We need a class on that shit.
Yeah, we got to start. Like you said, Doc. We got to start from. I'm the one who made a historical context. My opinion, like when you're asking for a solution, you know, when you're giving birth to these children and having families, you got to start from almost like a clean canvas state of thought. You know, you can't come because like the coddling ain't just started like in the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Whatever the disconnect and dysfunction is something that we've been carrying on from generation to generation and probably accelerated itself during Jim Crow, you know? I saw Marissa, she said in the comments, we don't allow our young men, our men to be able to be expressive, you know? We don't allow them that, we always push in, somebody on here might get pissed off, but I really don't care. But we push them, especially in Jacksonville, we push them in Jacksonville, Florida, where we are right now. This is me being in the schools. I've taught in middle schools and especially in like urban environments. We push them to go play football. Go play football, knock somebody down. Ain't nothing wrong with football. But can they also do poetry? Can they sing or read a book or do a dance? Y'all gonna call them I'm gonna say a gay, I don't wanna, I'm kind of drunk and I don't wanna say nothing kind of derogatory. But we're gonna say, you're gonna call him some kind of like gay derogatory word if he dances or something like that. Ain't nothing wrong with a little boy who want to dance. You know what I'm saying?
And they say that he's soft, right? And here's the reality, and I think this is when we talk about figuring out how to start, because we're gonna have to wrap it up. Apparently, this is gonna be a part 2, Rock.
We got to. Because I'm not gonna sit there and because it's like y'all are coming up like, oh, I don't know why people are doing this thing. It's the thing you created.
But no, here's the thing. It's something. Here, to be fair, it's something we all created, right? We created it, right, and we've allowed it, right. So now we have to get to a point. What we have to realize, I think, where we start is we have to understand on both sides, black, white, male, female, straight, gay. We don't know shit. We don't know shit about shit when it comes to life, right? None of us have an instruction manual. None of us know exactly, especially now, being a person of color in the South, we don't know what the hell is about to happen. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what the next thing is. The only thing that we can do is live for now, right? We can't keep going back to the past. We can't keep saying, oh, well, this is just what. Here's the one thing that I'm going to say that I want to kind of lead into the next conversation with is when we tell a black man, or if I have a problem with a black man, right? And he's being aggressive. The response is, you should just apologize, or you should be the one to understand this black man's trauma and understand that where he came from. So you need to apologize, not him. He don't need to correct it. Yeah, but you need to apologize because he's had a hard life, or he's been going through some shit. Nigga, I'm depressed. Sorry, excuse me. I'm getting real.
We all
you know what I'm saying?
We all know that.
Quick story about that right now. So, like, somebody broke in my house some years ago, right? Dude broke in my house. There's blood all over my window, shit all over the place. So I end up having to go to, I press charges. Jacksonville is a bunch of bullshit. So I end up having to go to trial and stuff like that. So I get a call with two brothers. I'm not gonna name their names. They were activists. One has since passed, but one is an activist in the community. One who since passed, he told me, sister, why are you gonna charge that brother for breaking in? I was like, you gonna get the fuck up out my face with this bullshit. Like, I don't care about liking me. Understand? That's probably why I'm single. I don't care about you liking me. I'm like, this nigga broke into my house.
And God forbid, thank God you weren't there.
If I was there, it'd be a bullet in between his eyes. Understand that. Because I'm a duval chick. Understand that first and foremost. Ron, you like, I know you all pumps and circumstance and all smooth out and polished and hot. Okay. And I tell him, I said, brother, if you commit a crime, I'm not going to forgive it because you're a black man. So I should black man.
Absolutely.
It's mad. I'm done. It's mad.
I was gonna say, for me, when we talk about the history and what role that plays, like what I think needs to happen for us to get the collective healing is to understand that when Black men are fighting for their freedom from oppression, right? Black women is there to support them. But let's like the analogy I use is we were both locked in a cage together, right? And then every 2 hours, right, master comes around and puts a bowl in there and then comes around and takes the bowl away, right? And so the bowl that master gives the Black man has more food in it than the bowl that master gives the Black woman. The Black woman says, you know, I don't think it's right that I don't get as much food as you. I'm very hungry too. I'm just as hungry as you are. The Black man says, why are you worried about how much food you got when we're both in a cage? Help me get out of here. Stop being divisive, right? So like that is to say, Black men could vote in this country before Black women could. But that did not stop Coretta Scott King from showing up and being happy and applauding her husband's efforts and speaking on behalf of the victory that her husband helped to win, right? Herself still not being able to vote. You understand? And what I think needs to happen is for Black men to not consider themselves free or liberated, like unoppressed, right? Until that includes Black women also having the same liberties and the same freedoms and the same form of justice that they do. It was proven with the Say Her Name movement. You know, why is it that the outrage over a Black man getting killed is far more of a greater cry than the outrage over a Black woman being killed? That is to say that their bodies, you know, are more traumatizing to see than that of a Black woman.
And standing up for themselves, right? Look at Marissa, right? Look at everything Marissa Alexander had to go through.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's for standing up.
Exactly. You know, for just standing her ground, right? And so like these are the type of things that we can come together on. It's just a matter of unifying that I will not tolerate it against a Black man. I'm not going to tolerate someone mistreating a Black man in my presence any more than I'm willing to tolerate someone mistreating a Black woman in my presence. However, when I'm with Black men, I feel like they have more of a tolerance for the mistreatment of Black women than they do for the mistreatment of Black men. And when a Black woman brings it up saying, hey, why is it okay for them to mistreat her and not for them to mistreat him? It's like, you're being divisive. You know, why is that the time to bring that up, you know?
So in summary, it sounds like, because I'm going back to Rahman's statement. It sounds like, and I could be wrong, when you say we created it, I don't know. I'm gonna be dreaming about that statement the next time. We're gonna actually have a conversation about it. When you say we created it, I can see how you can perceive. No one on this panel actually said that, but I can see how you perceive that. Because what I hear, and I could be wrong, y'all can tell me, what I hear everybody saying is, at a certain point, we, regardless of what the Black man does, we gonna keep it pushing. So it appears that we created this situation because we kept it pushing. And because we got tired of telling you what you should or should not be doing, when we needed to get ourselves together, when we're trying to heal ourselves and we're not getting the support. So instead of continuing to talk to you about that, because you're not a dog, you're not an animal, right? And so we're not going to treat you like that. We're going to care enough about you to give you the support that you need, whether or not you gave it to us or not. So because we're not holding you accountable, foot on your neck like that, then we created it. But we really didn't create it. We just got tired of talking about it. And the reason we got tired of talking about it is because we weren't being heard. But sometimes the reason why as women we're not being heard is because we don't know how to effectively articulate it without yelling at you. And so when we're yelling at you, you shut down and you don't want to hear it. But the yelling sometimes is just a cry for help, just like your aggressiveness is a cry for help. So when you think about a child being born, you don't become a parent until you birth the child. So you're not just birthing the child also births you. So when you think about it from that perspective, we're doing this, we are birthing it together. We're birthing one another. It's not a we created it or you're creating it. We are it's a revolving circle of life that we need to, or cycle that we need to figure out how to, like Ebony said, work in unity to resolve. But it has to come with effect. Man, it ain't gonna happen without no effective communication. But what we didn't do is create something. It evolved into itself because no one else knew how to handle it. We didn't know what to do with it. And when you just get sick and tired, you get sick and tired, and you just say, well, keep on kicking rocks because I'm gonna go do this over here. And then now it appears that we're not holding you accountable. We just needed to take a break. We tired, but now we woke. So we now we woke. So we got energy. We got energy. So we all get ready to come together.
I think it's also important to point out, you know what I'm saying? Like people like Rock is an anomaly, unfortunately, when it comes to a black man. You know what I'm saying?
He is.
You know,
but he ain't gonna tell me we created something now. I'm just like, wait a minute.
But let me tell you something. No, because it hurts to hear. I gotta say this though. When I was a black man, when I was a black boy coming up, right? I remember when I ran for office, I did something no one else had done by running for office, the youngest elected, and I don't talk about it anymore. But I did that.
But I love it.
But black women, and I've never talked about this before. They tried to take me out. And I don't mean to dinner. Because I was told that I wasn't supposed to be doing this because I was a black man. This wasn't my thing. So it was the black women that were the leadership that didn't want me to do the thing, that did things discreetly behind the scenes to try to keep me from doing, because there was this thing that, oh, well, it's time for women to lead. That's one of the reasons I pour into all my students. All of you all know we all work together and we've all done stuff. I pour into these students. I don't teach because clearly those of us know we don't make money from this.
Big fact.
I pour into my students, but I try to get, we as black men aren't allowed to have empathy, right? We are told that we shouldn't feel. We're in the space of non-feeling and like even when Gavin and I connected, Gavin we're friends now, but he was a mentee, wasn't in one of my classes, but he came to me for help. We as black men don't go for help. We got to get it on our own in some way, shape, or form. And I will tell you though, the reason it's just so tight for me right now is because I had black women try to stop me just because I was a man. Just because they were saying black women are supposed to do this. So y'all gotta, it's like,
I get that part, but that we do each other like that though. Like not men and women. I'm saying to me that's a people thing. Yeah. That's a hate thing. That's a insecurity thing.
It's a southern thing.
A southern thing.
It's a southern thing.
And women do that to each other. So I get that. I get what you're saying. Like the lack of support in that particular arena came from women, but it probably could have come from some men. It probably came from some men too, because people just hate because they don't.
But think about it. All these organizations, we can't even. You got Black Girl Magic, Black Girls Rock, Black Girl this. I was so excited when we had My Brother's Keeper, because here's a time for us black men to tell and affirm other black men, and we never had that. Y'all could affirm.
But I think that's what's effective.
But here's the thing, though. But they're starting the movement, right? You got the Black Boy Joy, right? Like anytime I see it,
now,
I love
what
it.
I'm saying is,
you're right now. But here's the thing, right? If we think about the totem pole, right? There is a totem pole, whether we realize it or not. Black women are legit on the bottom of that totem pole. You
and
got
I don't
the
agree
white
with that.
man.
No, absolutely not. Because
from a society,
no. Black, when I walk into an executive suite, when I walk into a national, my meeting with Nickelodeon, I am clearly viewed as a threat more so than a black woman. A black woman can get in places I can't get into. I'm sorry. I'm a threat. And you all,
Making a
when
whole
you're
50
talking
cents
about
to
that,
your
you are
dollar, sir.
absolutely
Making
incorrect.
a whole 50 cents to your dollar.
You said yourself, you said the Black Girl Magic movement. Black girls made that movement. Black men make no movement.
We did.
But how do you deny somebody like just like somebody we can't deny you of your experiences? How do you deny us?
We couldn't have that moment, Centauria. We couldn't.
You were
have that moment.
Now, what is stopping you from having that moment right now?
Tasha, what I'm saying is we are, but it's just like with racism in this country. It was like black girls, go do this, go do the women, this, that, and the other. Because you think about it in Hidden Figures. And I'm just giving that one example. They didn't push men to do stuff like that. Y'all go work and take care of family.
But that's because women weren't supposed to be in those positions. Like we weren't allowed to be in those positions.
Because there was so much more nurturing. I'm not going to accept that because again, you can get into places that I can't because you
are way in those places.
But you
y'all like black men black women, please.
Like what you were saying with those black women who was shitting on you when you became an elected official, those were specific women that were assholes.
Right.
It wasn't black women.
Indicative of the South. No, ma'am. It was like that across the South.
Not all of us. Some of us
really majority. Any black man, you could go back and look from 1967 forward when black men would run against black women, they would come against the black man so the black woman could win. And many of the political party establishments would do that because it was more palatable to deal with a woman.
Or you look at the fact that black women only do that if black men don't.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? Because we gonna be in here. We gonna be up till now.
We might need to wrap it up.
We're gonna wrap it up. But I still have one question we're gonna leave on the table. We're gonna leave this question on the table for reflection. This is the homework. Because I want to understand how did this conversation turn into a competition about who can do what? Because when you're saying y'all can get into women, y'all can get into places that we can, you can get into places that we can't get into. When you talk about politics, we just got the first Black woman in an elected seat. That's predominantly white men. So I don't
again, but you also had Mary McLeod Bethune who was doing the work before. They're not just one. No.
I'm saying, but when you look across the board and when you look in the leadership,
but this is not about a competition. What I'm doing is enlightening the issue so that you understand. That's all I'm doing is illuminating the issue. I'm not saying it's women versus men, but what I am saying is that men have not had the space and capacity. Right, and all I'm asking about coddling, and I'm talking about, and this is a different issue, not on the coddling issue. But don't come and tell me that, like I just heard, that women are at the totem pole and women have had it so much better than black men.
Brother,
I ain't gonna say that.
Brother,
but that's what we said. That's what the sister said.
Brother, do you listen to hip hop music?
Ooh.
Absolutely, I listen to hip hop.
You listen to hip hop music, okay? So when you said that black men have not had these platforms, okay? Yeah. What about hip hop music does not make you feel like that's a black man's platform?
You are pulling. No, I'm offended that you would ask such because you are taking one microcosm of this particular thing and saying that it is indicative of the entire diaspora.
Please allow me to finish. Please allow me to finish. Okay. When you talk about black men not having these spaces like Black Girl Magic, because the reason why these places were created, these spaces for black men were created, was because of our marginalization as a black woman, as a double minority, as being black and a woman. That's why these spaces are necessary, because we were denied our platforms. So when we talk about you listening to hip hop music, what I'm saying is, what about hip hop music does not make you feel like that's a safe space for black men to support each other, affirm each other, encourage each other, allow each other safe space to vent and discuss their ailments, inclusive of the way in which they feel about black women, to the point that it had gotten so bad and derogatory that black women themselves had to create a safe space within the hip hop environment for us to exist, for us to be. That's where a lot of that comes from. It's from us being, reprimanded repeatedly in hip hop, in a global movement such as hip hop music that was founded and created in majority, in large part, due to the efforts and labors of black women, and in large, in mass, the awards that they've received, the accolades that are received, the CEOs and executives of hip hop labels, the best-selling artists. Okay, this is a platform. It's a global platform for Black men. The Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus. Most of the members of the Congressional Black Caucus are what? Black men. Okay, when you talk about 100 Black men, when you talk about all of it, SNCC and the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. When you talk about the Southern Leadership Conference, we cannot talk about movements without saying that there have been platforms that have received global recognition, Nobel Peace Prize award-winning organizations, you understand, that are predominantly Black men leadership on the efforts and support and labors of Black women.
No one said that it wasn't, but what I'm not going to do is allow you to sit here and say, no. What we're not going to do is allow you, however, to marginalize and say that that Black men, and say that we've had the same platforms and efforts, and that Black. I see no specific evidence that Black men have had more opportunity than Black women. I'm sorry. And I know that, and we can talk statistics when we come back, but that is something I wholly reject. Like, we got to work on this thing together. It's no, I've been treated worse than you or you than me, but we also got to look at this thing and say that there are opportunities that Black women have been afforded that we don't get.
Do you?
I think that's a natural, but that's to me, that's a thing that's to happen, right? Because of the way, first of all, we all know that this society was built for white men. Mm-hmm. It was built by white men, or built by us for white men, right? We built everything, and they came in and they said that this is the way it's going to be for and by white men, right? So you have the white men first. When we talk about privilege and we talk about race and we talk about gender and all these things, naturally across the board, we're all at some level of, Black, because you are a Black man, you're afforded certain opportunities. Because you are a Black woman, you're afforded certain opportunities. That's going to happen across the board, right? The reality is, we got to figure out, we have to stop playing that. And it's not even necessarily competition. It's just playing that tit for tat. Like, y'all, Black men can get it, Black women can get into this, and Black men can get in that. So what? How can we raise each other up? It don't matter. It doesn't matter that Black men or Black women are able to get into a certain place or certain positions than a Black man, because there's certain positions that Black men can get that a Black woman can't get. That's the reality. How do we work together? How do we raise each other up instead of?
Unfortunately, I just think you're hearing something different, because it's not about the position. It's just the fact that people who look like Gavin, who look like myself, we just are perceived of more of a threat when we walk in the room. And unfortunately, that's just the reality.
But so are Black women. So are Black women. I am not at my corporate job that I was a threat because I was a Black woman.
So for part 2 of the conversation, are we able to come back and effectively articulate what we need from one another? Because I think that part, I don't know. I just feel like it's irrelevant. I think it's about, if we're going to heal, it's like, okay, you didn't get to do this, or we didn't get to do that. Okay, fine. We all Black, so we all.
Yeah, but it's not irrelevant. Like,
but I'm saying, like, when you talk about healing, but what I'm saying, when you're talking about healing, you can go on and on and on about what a particular group of women or a particular group of men may have done to each other. We understand that there is inequality in privilege even within our own culture, within who we are as a people. So it still goes back to, okay, but what do you need from me? Can you tell me that? Can you articulate to me, what do you need from me? As opposed to saying, well, I made you, because to me, that's, you made me act this way. I didn't make you do nothing. You know, you have.
And again, that's what I'm saying. When we just, and you're right, it's going to be another discussion, clearly, because
but we still gotta come back and say, what do you need
here? And that's what I think the homework needs to be. But don't. I'm going to wholly reject. We cannot. I can't see the castigation of saying specifically that. Let's just put that to the side. that's part of the reason. That's how you heal, is having the conversation so we can dump it all out on the table. You make the sausage, so to speak. Forgive me for my vegan friends. You make the sausage, because the sausage making process ain't pretty, but hopefully we have a better thing. So that's why it's getting it out.
I'm not saying put it to the side, but what I am saying, what I was hearing with the
That's what you said.
yeah, I am, because what I heard with the conversation is, you're not going to tell me that you can't do this, don't happen, or that's don't happen. It's like, I can tell you that because it's my experience, just like you can tell me because it's your experience. So you don't negate the feelings of one another, but what you do is say, okay, you had that experience, I had my experience, so what do we give to each other? Like, how do we not minimize how we feel about the situation and tell each other we wrong? Because you can't tell me how I feel, just like I can't tell you how you feel. You can't tell me what spaces I haven't been able to get into, just like I can't tell you what spaces you haven't been able to get into. But what we do know as a fact is, we have all been treated in a way, as Black men and Black women, we have all had limited spaces. So it's like, all right, if we're talking about healing, we recognize that part, but then how do we move from that part of the conversation? I'm not saying it wasn't important, but I'm saying, okay, at a certain point, we got to stop saying, well, you, because that's what it was turning into, and say, okay, fine, that happened, but now how do we support one another? How do we go
and
back
I think
and
we were getting there, but I just don't want us to put, and I'm sorry, and I hear you, sister, but I don't want us to get to the point where we don't, and I don't think it was you. It was like, here are these things that are occurring. Let's talk about it, truthfully, right? Let's stick it out on the table. Let's throw it down. And then we come on and say, here is what I need from you. And so I agree with you there, but we also must honor, there was a line that I read once that says, if we don't honor the demons, then they can always haunt us. Honoring them doesn't mean to hold them to a place of reverence. It simply means to recognize their existence, and they can't haunt us.
But when you say honor the demons, my thing is make sure the demons are accurate. Because some of the stuff you were saying wasn't accurate.
It's not accurate to you. No, it is. And you just did what you said you wouldn't do.
But I'm saying,
you can't tell me what's accurate for me.
But I'm actually telling you, it's like, okay, from my experience.
It doesn't mean it means anything, because you, again, just did what you said.
I'm saying just make sure that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 women on this screen that's telling you that, okay, you're saying what you're saying about a particular group of women, but then you casted a wide net. When we spoke
but there are women who also agreed in the comments who said, yeah, brother, I see what you're saying. So I'm not going to just hold it down and say that.
We're not saying we don't. Okay. We're not saying we don't see what you're saying.
Go ahead, Ruth.
But what I am saying is, we have to get to a point where we have to be able to articulate what is it that we need.
Go ahead, Natasha.
Okay, listen. We are slightly off topic. I'm going to circle it back and say that we need 2 parallel things to go on. Rahman and Taryn, we need this segment on a later note. Yes. But for coming back to coddling, I think we need 2 parallel paths. Like, I'm going to put on my 20 years of youth development hat and say, we need a way to focus on raising both our sons and our daughters with equal standards of excellence. And as adults, we need a way to be able to communicate with each other calmly, to say, this is what I need. This is what I'm hearing. Is this what you said? Right? And if we can get on board with both of those things, then as we are naming our demons by their true name, we're making sure that we're choosing something different for the generations that we are trying to affect, and cutting out the coddling. It was some great comments that I could not jump into about how sons are loved and daughters are taught to survive, about how parents give their kids what they wish they had. And I really would like us to spend some time in those comments to figure out how we're going to address that. And perhaps that needs to be a later date, but I definitely think coddling needs a part 2. And then we need to have a whole conversation on systemic issues, specifically around music and politics.
Yeah, I agree completely. So I think we'll go ahead, Mr. EWC.
What you gotta say?
Gavin, go ahead.
muted.
Gavin Anderson.
Oh wait, let me.
Y'all can hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because it's very hard to speak in a room when they don't acknowledge the hand being raised. You know, you want to give respect to everyone who's speaking, and you want to wait your turn. You know what I'm saying?
You better jump in.
Hey,
I didn't know what you was doing. I
next
thought he was waving.
time-
I didn't know what you was doing. My bad.
next time I'm just start slapping the phone next time, man. God no. But no, a lot of the things that I did want to say are long overdue now. We can talk about that later on the next segment or whatever. But the main thing I did want to just embark on while I was waiting to speak is just that of his sense. A lot of times, man, when it comes down to fixing the problem, we continue to replace ourselves in the same problem because of, like everyone's saying, being effective, having that way of communication, this, that, and the third. It's not so much all about your tools. It's really about it's really about the work itself and what you utilize and what you know within yourself to come down together to handle the problem. You gotta have, before you can try to attack a problem, you gotta have a method, and you gotta have a goal toward the end of the problem to be able to figure it out within the sense. I mean, that's pretty much just all I was thinking of. A lot of times that's how you can go off topic with a lot of things, man. You're getting your feelings about things, and it's not getting your feelings within a bad sense. I mean, this is the topic of feeling. You get what I'm saying? We feel this every day, no matter where we are in life. You know what I'm saying? On the ups or downs of it. So that was just something that I just was kind of just dwelling on as I was trying to, reach my way in or whatever the case may be. But definitely something to think about. Definitely something to think about on the second term, because I was agreeing with a few of my lady friends, and I do understand what Rock, where you coming from in general, just by overly saying that, it's the women and this, that, and the third, because I have a person feel like before you can ultimately handle the problem, you have to attack the problem for what it is, and you got to just be brutally honest about it, because that's what it takes. It takes those groundbreaking moments to be able to have that shift and to be able to have something either rise or fall from it. So that's just where I'm coming from. Everything else was great as far as the panel.
We're gonna make sure that you get on first, Gavin. Next time, Gavin, we're gonna make sure that you get on first. Okay, black man, we just gonna make sure that you can say your piece.
I'm the youngest in the room.
No. Here we go.
Say something real quick, and this is from a perspective as a father. The best thing I can say is, as far as coddling is concerned, is I want to try to raise my son the best I can possibly raise him in the climate that we're dealing with today. Now, there are going to be times that I fall short, but I also have to acknowledge that I do have a helpmeet here that will tell me I'm doing something wrong. Now, what my problem is, I've got to set my feelings aside to be able to register with the information that's being given to me from a different point of view, and not to have my pride to say, no, my way is the best way, and I'm going to go this way on how to raise my son. Because ultimately is she, as my wife, is teaching him things that he has to know, because at some point in time, my son is getting ready to leave to go to college, and he's going to experience a whole different vibe on what he has experienced here in his 19 years here being in Jacksonville. So we as a couple have to do what we have to do to get him to be able to go out there wherever it will be, whether it's in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Washington, to be able to cope with the different shit he's going to deal with when he get to where he has to be. And that's what I'm looking for from this panel, is for you guys to give me and us some different perspectives on how we can get him to be the best man he could be, because at some point in time, he's going to be a father
who is hopefully not coddling his children.
How can we all do it together, ultimately?
Right.
Or his panel, or her panel.
You had this advantage, you had that advantage. What door somebody else can walk through, and who can't walk through this door? I'm coming to some of the experts to try to figure out what can I do to help help my son.
Rockman, you an expert? I ain't claiming that.
I ain't no
I don't know nothing, sir. I don't know nothing.
We all have valuable perspective, and I know the people on this panel, because I feel like I know y'all real personally. I know that I've not birthed, I don't have any biological children. I was blessed to marry into some teenagers, and baby, I'm in it, right? But it's my first time at it. I will say we are all trying to help raise other people's children out there in the world, and we're all seeking to solve this problem together. We're sharing our shared perspectives, right? To solve a common problem.
What I will say to the Coleys, which thank you for presenting the perspective of a married couple that does have a blended family, because that's important too. Because these are all our children, and that's like a village life type of situation, and that's important to see, and that's important to acknowledge. I think that what taught me how to coddle Black men, and this is just me being painfully honest, is that it was necessary for me to pretend that patriarchy did not exist in my realm, because racism was more easily identifiable and more comfortable to discuss with Black men. For me to suppress the patriarchy and misogyny that I experience on a daily basis for the sake of not bringing that to the conversation when racism was the most prevalent thing affecting the Black men in my cipher. For the Black men in my cipher to not be charged or held accountable to defend me against patriarchy and misogyny, because racism was literally the everyday threat of their livelihood. Meanwhile, the reality, my situation is Black women are more likely to be left alive by their rapists than their lover after a domestic dispute. And me pretending like that's not the situation that's happening every day, Black women not losing their lives to their lovers and their partners every day for the sake of us addressing the greatest situation, which is racism, that is the one that's comfortable to talk about, for us to unify on and work together on. Like, that's where the coddling begins with me, which is why I take issue with it saying it was started by Black women. I was taught to coddle Black men through the trauma of racism. That's what I'm saying, is like, I'm aware of the trauma of racism and poverty, and I was taught to coddle Black men as a result. And what I'm saying is, what I need from Black men is to acknowledge that patriarchy does exist. And as a result of patriarchy being a thing, sometimes it causes me to have to choose between being Black and being a woman. Which is, because of intersectionality, it's something that I cannot do. And it gets in the way of our communication and our relationship, because I need you to care that I'm oppressed, because I care very much that you're oppressed. And that's where I need us to find some form of common ground. We got to find our way through that. We got to figure that out, because it's just not working. And that what our conversation here just proves that it's not working. And we got to figure that out.
And I think that's a really brilliant note to end on. I want to say thank you so much to Centauria Thomas, Ebony Payne English, Dr. Kenesha Braceley, Gavin Anderson, Mr. EWC, Ruth Spencer Coley, and her husband, Mr. Coley. And on behalf of myself and LoveReigns, thank you all. Now, let me end this by saying this is just the start of the conversation. It doesn't end here. The conversation goes into our homes. It goes into our offices, wherever we are, because that's the only way that we can truly heal, is if we have the tough conversations. All of us know each other on this panel. All of us are friends, but as most people of color know, all of us are hella passionate. And what you saw tonight was a display of passion. Now, what we're gonna do, and we hope you'll do the same, is to take that passion and funnel it in to change. We will be back. We're gonna talk about it. You guys come and but do the work. Let's do the work. Let's come with some specifics. So our next conversation, when we come together, we're gonna talk about what it takes and what we can do individually and collectively to make the change. Again, for LoveReigns and Random Thoughts of Rain and Random Thoughts of Rain and the Rahman Experience podcast. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you next time.
Peace, y'all.
Bye.
All right, we're ended, but I think we all can still hear each other.